In GED, social studies, geography, a lot of the questions that you're going to get in geography will be to do with climate change, understanding the fuels that we burn that have caused climate change, understanding a map of the world, understanding where the big oceans are, where the names of the different continents, understanding the concept of the poles being cold places and around the equator, around the center of the world, it tending to be hotter. Understanding ecosystems and how ecosystems work. Understanding how to read a map. The Earth is changing all the time. If you look at the Earth 100 million years ago and the Earth today, you can see how the continents and oceans have moved. And they continue very, very slowly to move. So in 100 million years' time, the Earth will look again very different to how it looks now. Look how Africa and South America were almost touching each other. And the same with North America and Europe. The highest mountain today is Mount Everest, 5.5 miles above sea level. The lowest point in the world, 7 miles below sea level, is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Ecosystems. Ecosystems are an area where, depending on the climate, the landscape and the animals and plants living in it, an ecosystem will develop between them that allow them all to live together. There are lots of different climates. There are tropical climates, temperate climates, arid, which means dry climates, and cold, Arctic climates. There are also many different topographies. Topography means what's the land around it? Is it a mountainous area? Is it a river valley? Is it a flat plain? Is it an ocean? As a result of the fact that you have many different climates in the world and also many different topographies, that means that there are also many different ecosystems. An animal that lives in the Arctic will not be the same as one that lives in a tropical climate. The plants will be different and they will work together in a different way. There will be a different ecosystem. Here are some very different environments that we experience in the world that will have very different ecosystems. In the top left, you have an arid desert. There's virtually no life at all. Almost no plants can survive in the dry atmosphere, and the same with animals. But there will be something, maybe very small insects and plants able to withstand very dry conditions, and maybe other animals, and they will react together. In the Arctic, again, there'll probably be almost no ecosystem of plants and animals at all. There might be the polar bear, the fish. There might be some very hardy plants that can get through the winter. Now, going down to the bottom left, which looks very like my country, England, a much more sophisticated ecosystem, because you have a climate where there is enough warmth and enough rain for there to be a good deal of animal, plant life that can sustain itself in that gently hilly environment. And on the right, you've got a tropical environment too, a very different ecosystem. In America, there is an ecosystem called the temperate forest. So that is an area of forest where the climate is neither warm nor cold. It's kind of in the middle. And in this forest, there are many trees and bushes, and on the trees and bushes, nuts and fruits are produced. And inside the nuts and the fruits lie seeds. When these fruits and nuts are eaten by small animals and birds, the seeds get distributed in their poo. So it's really quite a clever way for the trees and bushes to distribute their seeds over a wide area. Wolves and hawks, which are birds of prey, will eat these small animals and birds. The small animals and birds might also, as well as eating nuts and fruits, eat insects. All the animal poo and the remains of dead animals and the remains of dead plants, when they die and lie on and fall into the earth, they produce nutrients that make the soil help plants in the soil to grow. And so with that, more trees and bushes are produced, and on the circle of life goes. More trees and bushes produce more nuts and fruits, which mean that more animals and birds can survive and thrive and eat those nuts and fruits and produce seeds and distribute those seeds in their poo. And the wolves and the hawks can prey on these small animals and birds, eat them. Those small animals and birds, before they're eaten, as well as eating nuts and fruits, will eat insects. And all of these will work together to keep this a self-sustaining circle of life going. That is an example of an ecosystem. Humans often interfere with the ecosystem, and they will build farms and fields. They might change the plant life and the animal life to suit them. For humans to thrive, they like fresh water. We need fresh water for agriculture and for us to drink. Rivers, lakes, rainfall are very important for us. Humans are very fussy about their climate. They like a climate that isn't too harsh. In Myanmar, everybody complains that it's too hot. In England, everyone complains that it's too cold. We're never happy. But in order for us to thrive, we want to find an environment that is not too hot or too cold. Those deserts and those Arctic environments are not good for humans. We also prefer an environment that's not too mountainous. We can live in mountains, but if we want to grow crops and have farms, on the plains is a better place for us to live. We also like to be able to travel easily. So coastal areas, you find a lot of people living in coastal areas or in areas where it's easy to travel. Man has changed the environment. He's actually changed ecosystems. In the beginning, when man first started to toil the earth, he would simply take an area near the village and would turn the soil and sow crops. And then as he wanted his farm to be bigger, he would begin to chop down trees for wood and create that space to have more farmland. People wanted to live together. People wanted a better shelter, so houses and walls were built. Then man learned how to use water, how to build irrigation systems. This meant that your farm didn't have to be right beside the river. You could build a small channel to bring the water to your fields further away from the river. Man learned that waste brought disease and that what waste needed to be disposed of. As he got more sophisticated, more and more forests were cut down. As people lived in bigger congregations, cities, roads and bridges were built. And then with the Industrial Revolution, which we learned about in focusing themes, it actually started in the UK, came factories, mines, railroads. And we learnt that with these engines, machines that we were using to power our Industrial Revolution, that we could burn oil, gas, and coal. This was the beginning of the climate change crisis that we have today. Now we are burning so much oil, gas, and coal that the way that we started to change the environment was simply turning soil and sowing crops has become so damaging that it actually threatens our very existence. We're burning massive amounts of fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. We also have nuclear power plants. Now, nuclear power plants do not create any fossil fuel, but there is always a danger that a nuclear power plant could explode. And if that happens, it causes untold damage to anyone living anywhere near it. As well as massive burning of fossil fuels, we are overfishing our seas. Old fishermen will tell you that 40 years ago, there were many more fish for them to catch in the sea than there are today. There's plastic waste, huge amounts of plastic waste. It's destroying our fields, destroying our villages, and indeed, there is almost more plastic in the sea today than fish. In order to try to stop the environmental damage that we're doing to the world, there is what's called the green movement. The world is suffering from global warming due to fossil fuel emissions. When we burn fossil fuel, we create carbon dioxide and other dangerous gases. And these gases will float to the top of the atmosphere. And as the sun shines through the CO2 and other gases, it has the effect of warming the climate because there's too much carbon dioxide in our climate. As a result of this, average temperatures in the world are rising, and this is leading to melting glaciers, rising sea levels. Fossil fuels, and by that I mean oil, gas, coal, are a limited resource. And what the green movement is trying to do, it's saying, let's move away from these non-renewable sources of fuel like oil, gas, and coal that is so damaging to our climate. And let's move more to renewable ones like wind and sunlight. If we create our electricity from wind power or from solar power, we create no CO2 emissions in creating this electricity. And so it is much more sustainable. To reduce waste like plastic waste, recycling is becoming more and more encouraged. So instead of using another plastic bottle and another plastic bottle and another plastic bottle, we use the same bottle again and again. And hopefully we don't use a plastic one. We use a more sustainable form of packaging than plastic. Organic farming, which avoids using chemical fertilizers and pesticides, is another form of the green movement. These chemical fertilizers that we put in our fields actually damage our rivers, and they damage the plants, and the pesticides too damage our rivers, damage our environment. And these are ways that, and other ways that the green movement is urging us all to change the way that we live. Humans, as well as destroying the planet, are also always going through periods of migration. Migration is the movement of large numbers of people from one place to another, and it's occurred throughout history. There is a connection between human migration and geography and the environment, because people will migrate to areas where it's easier for them to live, where they can find farmland, where crops can be grown more successfully, where the environment is more conducive to human life. They want to migrate to a better climate. They want to find better jobs. They want to avoid poverty or war or the effect of a natural disaster. If you move into a new country, we say that you immigrate with an I. Immigrate, you become an immigrant. If you leave another country, we say that you emigrate. So if you move from Myanmar to Thailand, when you arrive, you immigrate into Thailand with an I, immigrate into Thailand, and you become an immigrant. If you leave Myanmar, you emigrate with an E. You emigrate from Myanmar, but you immigrate into Thailand. So your leaving is your emigration, and your arrival is your immigration. So you are an emigrant from Myanmar. You are with an E, an emigrant from Myanmar. You are an immigrant into Thailand. When a large number of people from one country disperse to live in lots of new countries, the scattering of these people is called a diaspora. Diaspora. So if a lot of people move from India and they move to the UK, they move to Scandinavia, they move to Canada and the USA, we say this is the Indian diaspora, the scattering of the Indian people in these new countries. If you come to London, where I live, you will see that this is a city with people from so many different cultures. And there is very strong cultural diffusion in the UK. That just means that there's that when you look around everywhere, you see different cultures living together. Over time, our immigrants have learnt to assimilate with our culture. That means that they've learnt to live and accept and understand our culture. And we have also learnt to respect theirs. And that means that we have this largely happy coexistence of different people from all the different continents of the world, worshipping all the different religions of the world, with all the different foods that they eat. London is a city. One thing that we have seen in history is how people have moved from living in rural areas, because agriculture was the key industry, was where most people worked. Then with industrial revolution and with increased urbanization, people moved to cities. Now more than 50% of the world live in urban areas. In Asia, you are seeing huge migration of people moving from the countryside into the cities. The reason why people are moving to the cities is it's their belief that isn't always true, that if they move to the cities that they're going to find better paid jobs. It's going to be easier to find jobs. They're going to get better education and better healthcare. And for many Asian cities, this move of people into the cities is very difficult to manage. And many of the people that move to the cities actually find that their life doesn't get better at all. They move to the city, and having moved to the city, they find that actually there are not a lot of jobs. Housing is very limited, and the price of housing is very expensive, and they cannot afford it. We do often find that poverty is at its highest in areas with the fastest population growth. So if you have cities with huge numbers of new people coming in, cities tend to be areas that are very concentrated with limited housing, that it actually becomes very difficult to manage. The world population today is growing. There are more than 8 billion people, and by 2058, which is only 34 years away, we expect the population of the world to exceed 10 billion. This growth is really all coming in the developing countries. In the more developed countries, like in the UK and in Europe, North America, Japan, actually our populations are falling. if you think for a typical family, if a family has two children, then the population growth will be zero because the two children will replace mother and father. So in Europe, North America, and Japan, we're not even replacing. Why is this happening? Well, I think one reason is due to better sex equality. Mothers have a choice. They don't have to have lots of children. Mothers prefer not to have lots of children. They don't want to get pregnant many, many times. There is a better understanding of contraception. Women want careers. They want to work. And if they have too many children, it can affect their careers negatively. So they don't want to have many children. Some don't want to have any children at all. It becomes very acceptable for families to be small, have few children, for couples not to have any children at all. Whereas in developing countries where there is less equality between men and women, sometimes the mothers have little choice as to how many children they have. They are not well educated. They don't understand the use of contraceptions. That women do not have career desires, or if they do have desires for careers, they're not allowed to express those desires. And as a result, in developing countries, you are seeing a population continuing to expand quite dramatically. So going back to geography, the tools and skills, you're going to be asked questions in geography, and some of these questions are going to be about your ability to use a map. A map is one of the most important tools that they use in geography, and it can look very different. You might have a round globe that you can turn to see the world. You might be looking at a flat map on a piece of paper. Or you might be going into the internet and looking at Google Earth, which is a very interactive kind of map. When you design a map, you can use a map to highlight whatever you want it to. Your map could show you where all the best restaurants are. It might just show you where all the roads are. It might be a map about agriculture, so we can see what agriculture is used in different parts of the country. It might be a temperature map. It might be a rainfall map. It might be a map to show you the mountainous areas and the plain areas and the rivers. You can use a map to highlight whatever you want it to. And last slide here, we have a simple map of the world, and you can see on it longitude and latitude. And you do sometimes get questions with maps a little bit like this. And there you've got longitude and latitude. So the equator is the latitude line, and the prime meridian is the longitude line, which you notice the longitude line actually goes almost through my house in London. And if ever you come to London, I will take you to the longitude line, and you can put 1 foot in the west of the world and 1 foot in the east of the world. You may be asked questions about where we are in the map. If you are in the north of the world, right up here, is that a warmer place or a colder place than being right here? And if you're here, is that a warmer place or a colder place than being here? Of course, this is colder. I've seen a question which says when the longitude line and the latitude line cross here, what ocean is that? Is that the Indian Ocean? Is it the Pacific Ocean? Is it the Atlantic Ocean? Is it the Arctic Ocean? The answer is it's the Atlantic Ocean. So having a knowledge of oceans and continents. If we're looking at the continents of the world, which continent of the world will you find solely in the southeast section of the world? southeast section of the world. Southeast. This is the southeast section of the world. What continent will you find solely in the southeast continent? Asia? No. There's a little bit of Asia, but some of Asia's here. Africa? No. Some of Africa's there, but some of Africa's there. It's where you only find it. Well, America, there's none of America. There's certainly none of Europe. And Antarctica, well, some of it's here, but some of it's there. So which continent of the world would you only find in the southeast section, in this section here? And it's this continent here, Australasia. I think if you said Australia, they'd give it to you, but Australasia. So do you have that understanding of what all the different continents are? A typical kind of question that you might get in GED geography.